On the morning of May 27, 2026, armed agents in uniform entered the headquarters of the ruling party of the European state and began collecting documents. And this is not Belarus, you guessed wrong, and not even Hungary. This is Spain, a NATO country, a European Union country. But here's a question that no one will ask out loud today. Why exactly now? Interesting timing, as they say. What exactly has changed in the last 5 months that suddenly the scheme that worked for 20 years is falling apart? And I'll tell you about the scheme a bit later. It's very interesting, by the way. The answer is in New York, in a cell. Who is sitting there? Nicolas Maduro. Today I'll tell you a story that doesn't have an official ending yet, right? But it has a remarkable beginning. Remarkable. Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. Before we go any further, a paradox. When on January 3, 1926, American Special Forces captured Nicolas Maduro right in his heavily guarded residence in Caracas, the entire democratic world either remained silent or cautiously supported the operation. They captured the dictator. That's right, yes, the narco-terrorist. The man under whose rule 8 million citizens fled Venezuela. But one leader was shouting about violations of international law, about sovereignty, about how unacceptable it was, and he was shouting nervously for reasons that, as it turned out, were many. That was Pedro Sánchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, the leader of the Socialist Workers' Party. Just like Hitler, yes, the Socialist Workers' Party, only this is Spain and that was Germany. That very man, the one who would later block American military bases on his territory, following his own style. That very man whose party today is frozen in terror. They could take down their own people, yes, but the one who set all this up and organized it, they can't take him down. They don't quite have the guts. Venezuelan gold. Let's start with the money. Because in politics, just like everywhere else, you have to ask, who benefits? Venezuela under Chavez and then under Maduro was not just a dictatorship. It was a financial pump that channeled oil money through the state oil company PDVSA into the pockets of allies all over the world. Oops. Didn't we know that? No, gentlemen, this isn't my version. These are sworn testimonies given to an American court. Hugo Carvajal, general, longtime head of Venezuela's military intelligence, a man nicknamed El Pollo. Chicken, in our language, right? He knew and did everything. He was arrested in 2019. He was in Estremisa prison near Bodrin and was giving testimony to the Spanish court. Then he was extradited to the U.S., where he pleaded guilty to narco-terrorism and began cooperating with the investigation. Here's what he testified. The Venezuelan government was illegally funding. It funded left-wing political movements around the world for at least 15 years all over the world, including Spain. That's why we took him out of there so urgently. Otherwise, like Epstein, he might have accidentally eaten something there and died. For 15 years all over the world through the nationalized oil company. Specifically in Spain, the Podemos party was funded. The very same one that later entered into a coalition with Sanchez's Socialist Party. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. The oil company made contracts with shell companies. The money went through offshore entities, sometimes through Iranian entities, and ended up where the socialists needed them, in political funds. Well, in some media outlets that, as they say, later worked for them completely selflessly, in think tanks that later, for some reason, supported the political party, in the pockets of the right people, too, right? The right people are needed. And the right ones? People need money. Well, everything is easily solved. It was an investment. It's an investment. They just invested in people, invested in the government, invested in parties. And Maduro bought political cover in Europe, and he got it. A middleman. There is one person who stands at the center of this web. His name is José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. Remember this last name? He was the prime minister in Italy from 2004 to 2011. Of course, a socialist. Well, naturally a socialist, the predecessor of Sánchez, and by a strange coincidence, the mediator between Maduro and the Western world. All these recent years, Zapatero regularly flew to Caracas, officially, well, to maintain dialogue with the younger brothers. Unofficially, he kept the doors open, the doors of European institutions, the doors of the Spanish government, the doors of international legitimacy for the regime that starved its citizens to death. But the socialists couldn't care less about that. The European Parliament directly questioned the European Commission. Listen, aren't you concerned, guys and girls, about the constant and close ties between members of the ruling parties in Europe? Well, in particular Spain, and regimes with proven ties to drug trafficking? No answer. A clear answer, directly, not even once. Well, for now. But now Zapatero has been summoned to court as a suspect. And who pressured them? Oh, we don't know who could have pressured them. 7 days before today's search, there was a search at his house. Oh, wow. Oh, political money. In 2020, during COVID, Spain is handing out government subsidies. 53 million euros, a small amount, is received by Alyosenka, my tiny little company called Plus Ultra. The devil is in the details, right? Plus Ultra is a Spanish company, but it's owned by Venezuelans. According to experts, it does not meet the criteria for assistance. Well, it's too small, too insignificant, but it's owned by the right Venezuelans. And it gets money, just like that, as a gift. The investigation is wondering if this was money laundering. State funds, as they say, are disappearing. And we're talking about taxpayers' state money, right? It goes in there and comes out clean, you're absolutely right. And then it goes back to Venezuelan organizations. Legal money, look at the connection. Plus Ultra, Venezuelan owners, Zapatero, the Sánchez government, which approved the subsidy. So it's no longer a theory that they approved the subsidy for themselves. These are materials from the criminal case of the Spanish National Court, and we haven't even gotten to the most important part yet. What exactly happened between Washington and Madrid in 25 and 26 and why it changed everything. Sánchez lost his mind. He messed with the wrong person, as they say. Maduro's treasurer. There's another character, a very amusing one, Alex Saab. You know, like the car Saab, right? A Colombian businessman who actually became an official diplomat of Venezuela. De facto, he became Maduro's bagman. Billions were funneled through him. What's a bagman? Well, Putin has several of them too, right? That's his friend, the violinist, who said, "Oh, I have 2 billion in my account. Wow, I didn't even know I'd accumulated that much." Sobchak was the one who set up the schemes. So through Iran, through African countries, through Turkish banks, he was the one who negotiated who to pay and how much. In 2020, Saab's plane landed for refueling in Cape Verde, and at the request of the U.S., he was not allowed to leave. Maduro, that is, he was just hysterical about it, demanding his release. He was threatening, but it wasn't clear what exactly. Either to attack America, or to kidnap someone, or to do something, or to arrest the United States Secretary of the Treasury, but no one believed him. In 2021, extradition to the U.S., a guilty plea, and as we've already guessed, cooperation with the investigation. Well, Saab knew where the money was going, he knew the names, he knew the bank accounts, he knew the European recipients. Of course you can change the accounts, but you can't change the recipients. Sources. Stop for a second and ask yourself a simple question. If you are a European, American, or Canadian left-wing politician, here, right, yes? Well, let's imagine that, okay? And you say that you are fighting for justice, for equality, for the oppressed, for democracy against dictatorships. So from whom should you absolutely never take money under any circumstances? Let's think about it together, right? Well, the logical answer is no dictatorships. Yes, that's right. Not from terrorists, not from drug cartels, not from regimes that put people in concentration camps, stone women to death, hang homosexuals on construction cranes just because they're homosexuals. Remember your answer. Now, look at what's actually happened over the past 20 years, right?
Venezuela.
Venezuela, the narco-terrorist regime of Chavez and Maduro. Well, let's look at the countries. Let's start with the neighbors. Argentina, the famous suitcase scandal, 2007. Venezuelan Antonini Wilson was detained in Buenos Aires, with $800,000 in cash. He had $800,000 in cash, right? The money was going to Christina Kirchner's election campaign, as left-wing as it gets. Well, and of course, a personal friend and so on and so forth. They're practically making out. The court case in Miami in 2008 officially confirmed it. It was an operation by the Venezuelan intelligence services. So the Venezuelan intelligence services sent them, well, they caught them with $800,000, maybe even much more. Maybe they sent 1 out of 10. How do we know? They financed Christina Kirchner's election campaign. She was first the president's wife, then she became president herself. And then when her terms ended, they elected a figurehead president. And she became vice president. What an amazing woman. Yes, Brazil. That's not far either. Lula's Workers' Party. Workers' Party. Well, I think on the cocaine plantations, Chavez's ally in military socialism, the party became the central hub of a corruption network. That's not me saying it, that's what the court says. And a financial one, too. The money went to elections, to bribes, and to intimidation. Nice, yeah. Okay, let's move to Europe. Of course, everything is different there. In Europe, everything is different, so Italy. Alessandro Di Battista traveled to Caracas. He publicly defended Maduro. Well, there you go. And the case about illegal financing of the party with Venezuelan money is currently ongoing. The alliance with Maduro and the fact that he helped and so on is not disputed by anyone. They just say, what money? The money was just lying here. The money didn't come to the office from anywhere. And there was money lying there. We don't know where it came from. Corbyn and part of the Labour Party. This is the United Kingdom. Venezuelan money was already going through foundations. Investigators are working on the illegal receipt of money from abroad. It hasn't gone to court yet. Do you know why they suddenly started working on this topic out of nowhere? It was just lying there, and no one was working on it. And now, out of nowhere, they started working on it. It's unclear, right? Who pressured them? Where did the investigators suddenly get this information from? France. Mélenchon. Publicly defended, visited Maduro, regularly visited Caracas. The criminal investigation is in full swing. It's called Financial Ties and Unclear Money, Greece, Germany there, and Die Linke, years of political tourism to Caracas. Political tourism. Wonderful words, right? It's a term. I didn't make it up. Political tourism. What does it mean? They went to pay homage to Maduro for my money. Defending the regime from parliament. Venture capitalists circulated between both countries, Ishuela politicians, money in Russia. After coming back, they always defended the regime in parliament, and they said that it's the Americans making things up, that there are some drugs there. There are no drugs there. They would shamefully hide the traces of snorting on their faces. Sarah Wagenknecht. I think that's how it sounds, right? So, the former flagship of Die Linke, Sarah Wagenknecht. The former flagship of Die Linke. As always, I pronounce everything wrong. Now the leader of her own party, so here it's just 3 letters, so I'll get it right easily. BSW, not BMW, but BSW. Broadcasts on Russian television. It shifted its focus to money from Russia, not money from Venezuela. Trips to Moscow, about Kremlin positions, about Ukraine, about gas. Gas had to be pushed because they were paying for it. About NATO. If you're left-wing, then you should be against Russian bandits. Right, yeah? They're in favor, and these people not only defended them, there are well-documented attempts to get, well, let's say, here's one story, 17 million euros from Russian organizations. This is the Metropole case from 2018. A very famous case. Google it. Metropole, 2018. 17 million euros. All right. Corbyn, too. So the Kremlin used British Labour as a channel for its messages. Well, Zhenya, I mean, they have a faction. They had their own faction in the British Parliament, bought with their money and working for them, because they came from a progressive environment and sounded more convincing than if just Russians came and shouted in the squares. In the US, by the way, too. So, Russian troll factories in 2016, who do you think they supported? Who did they support? The trolls. They supported Trump. They supported Sanders, Jill Stein, and Black Lives Matter. That's it. Russia, through offshore funds, finances any politicians who are stopping the development of Western energy. Intelligence agencies have reported this more than once, 100 times. Why did the Democratic Party of the U.S. ignore this? Well, how about the fact that they were interested in not developing their own energy sector in the U.S. and the West, meaning their own energy sources? It's not clear why, right? Clinton said that he would not develop it. Clinton. Back in those days, when he was president, he had about 2 or 3 years left. They brought him a development plan, so to speak, for gas, oil, coal, and so on. He looked at it and said, and for a very long time, very long, no, I will no longer be in my position, someone else will be. And in general, no, we won't do this, we will buy. Okay, how about getting funding from China? China is, after all, the Communist Party that put millions of Uyghurs in concentration camps. Recently, before that, they were imprisoning a huge number of all kinds of people, and now, well, they've started targeting the Uyghurs. Canada. The Pierre Trudeau Foundation received $200,000 from 2 Chinese billionaires in 2016, which surprises me because it's such a small amount. The money was only returned in 2023 after the scandal. It was returned. Well, they put so much pressure on him that he was forced to give it back. I don't know how much he actually received, but he gave back $200,000. The president of the foundation and several board members resigned. Do you know why? They knew who gave the money and why they gave it. And I suspect they also knew about other things that were given and not made public. Canada, Liberal MP Hang Dong. Canadian intelligence notified the government that he is simply a spy for Beijing, China. Prime Minister Trudeau publicly ignored it. U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, she was my senator. Her longtime driver turned out to be a Chinese spy. The FBI removed him in 2018. She couldn't fire him after that. Eric Swalwell, Democratic congressman, Chinese agent. Christina Fang. She worked on his campaign. She had connections with at least 2 Democratic mayors, and she had an intimate relationship with him. By the way, even after he was informed that she was working for China, and she is a Chinese spy. But of course, the most important thing is that Joe Biden, at least 2 of his relatives, his own brother James and his son Hunter, received tens of millions of dollars from China. It's completely unclear what for. Well, okay, so Iran, a regime that executes people for not covering their hair, hangs homosexuals, and finances terrorism throughout the entire Middle East. Our Democrats gladly take money from them. And the student protests against Israel on American campuses are funded by Qatari and Turkish foundations. Specifically for this, and this isn't about ideology, gentlemen, they don't care about any of this, it's just business. In reality, it's just prostitution, only political. When you say, that's it, I'm for sale, who will pay more? If your homeland's enemy pays more, then, well, you work for the enemy. All right, but so to speak, I work for the enemy because he paid more, not because I support his views. They call it progressive internationalism, but in reality, it's anti-Western internationalism. A functional coalition of everyone who wants to weaken the United States of America, dismantle NATO, isolate Israel, undermine its market economy, and so on. Those who pay them don't do it because they love socialism. Tehran executes communists at home. There. Beijing investigates and shoots Uyghurs, suppresses LGBT. They are united by one thing. They all hate the American world order. They found ideal contractors for this subversion among Western left-wing parties. And here's the hardest part. For 20 years, this was covered up. For 20 years, anyone who pointed this out was called a conspiracy theorist, a McCarthyist, a right-wing paranoiac. Oh, by the way, in the Soviet Union, they called them right deviationists, and here they called them right-wing paranoiacs. Big difference. 2 very different things, as they say in Odessa, right? For 20 years, Western media, the very ones that were indirectly funded from the same sources through grants, advertising, partnerships, called it nonsense. But let's get back to Spain, and here the story takes a turn that most analysts still haven't connected into a single picture. Chronicle of the rupture. Look at the chronology of the relationship between Sánchez and Washington, And you'll see not random disagreements, but a systematic course toward confrontation. October 25th. All 32 NATO countries agreed to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP, all except one. Spain, under the leadership of Sánchez, refuses, the only country in the alliance. Sánchez calls 2.1% sufficient and realistic. Trump, of course, doesn't hide his irritation. I am, he says, very dissatisfied with Spain. I'm not the only one who hasn't raised the figure to 5%. This is disrespectful to NATO. Unheard of disrespect. That's what he told journalists at the White House. And he adds directly, I thought about trade penalties in the form of tariffs. I think I'll do it. Trump also suggested considering expelling Spain from NATO for refusing to fulfill allied obligations. February 26th, February 26th, March 26th. On March 26th, the U.S. and Israel strike Iran. Sánchez is the only EU leader who openly condemns the operation, and he takes the next step. He bans the use of American military bases on Spanish territory, that is the Rota and Moron bases for the operation against Iran. The Pentagon is forced to move a dozen tankers from Spain to the Ramstein base in Germany. Trump explodes, saying Spain is terrible, and so on. March, April, and then Sánchez goes even further. Trump explodes, saying Spain is terrible, and so on. March, April, and now Sánchez goes even further. Spain closes its airspace to American military planes connected to the Iranian conflict. Spain recalls its ambassador from Israel. Trump orders the Treasury Department to work out a complete break in trade relations with Spain. So, by May, that is 26/19/26, Spain, under the leadership of Sánchez, is the only U.S. ally in NATO that refused to meet the alliance's defense commitments, blocked American military bases, closed its airspace to American planes, condemned the operation against Maduro, and condemned the operation against Iran. And the funniest thing about all this is that it has documented ties to the Maduro regime through party structures. Hooray! Well, in other words, he's under Venezuela's thumb. January 3rd, 2026 at 2 a.m. Caracas time. Delta Force, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Strike on military infrastructure, attack on the residence at 2:28 a.m. Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are in the hands of the American military. January 5th. Helicopter, federal court, Manhattan, charges of narco-terrorism, money laundering conspiracy connected to the Sinaloa cartel and the organization known as Tren de Aragua. Maduro says, I'm not guilty. Well, he says this from a cell, and the cell is in a prison in the middle of America. Friends, I just remembered something. I unexpectedly found about 100 of my unsold collections of stories. These are humorous, funny stories. They were hidden completely by accident. Well, since I found them, I'll be selling them off in a final batch. But unlike the other books, I'll sign these. In the description, you'll find a link, and there, when you fill in your address during the purchase, there will be a field for a comment or message. That's where you can write your message, yes. In that message, write the name of the customer, your name, and the text you would like me to write, and of course I'll sign it there. For example, to Marina, happy birthday, or anything else you want. The book itself costs $20, and the shipping depends on whether you live in the US or somewhere overseas. You can always, so to speak, before you click the buy button, it calculates it for you when you place the order. Just in case, please also send the message you want me to write to the following email. So, rtf.comerton.global, well, it'll be down below. RTF. Our website is .comerton.global. These stories are from my life. They were written over the years, probably from around 1973 right up to almost this week. All the stories have been published in periodicals several times in many languages. By the way, one of them was included by Guberman in his book called The Story of the Unknown Soldier. It turned out that I was the unknown soldier. Yes, I was told that people saw my stories, translated back from foreign languages into other foreign languages, and very often my name would get lost along the way. So don't be surprised if you've read something like this somewhere before, either without the author's name or under some completely different name. But in any case, I guarantee that this is from my life. I guarantee that some of what you are about to read is pure truth. But I won't say which part. I like to keep the reader in suspense. Once again, the link is below. I sincerely envy you. You will be reading this for the first time, but I can't do that. I know them by heart. I wrote them, then rewrote them, then rewrote them again, and then, well, all right, that's it. That's it. The link is below. With that, let's get back to our pressing matters. Coincidence. Here I have to clearly distinguish between fact and theory. But it's a very significant theory. The facts. Venezuela financed European leftists for 15 years. Testimonies under oath in an American court. There is a lot of evidence. Zapatero was the conduit for Maduro's regime in Europe. This is also documented. Sabi and Carville are helping the U.S. investigation and know all about the money flows Venezuela funded Europeans. Since January 26, they've given sworn testimony in an American court, causing a surge in American corruption cases from February to May. From Spain, the threat apparently already leads to a bunch of other socialist structures in Europe. Now this version is being discussed in American analytical circles. The U.S. has detailed information about the European recipients of Venezuelan money, firsthand from people, facts. Actually, Venezuela financed the transfer of money to them. This information reached Spanish investigators through legal assistance mechanisms or other means. But there is also a tougher version, the one being discussed in American podcasts and policy circles. A lot of people are talking about it in American podcasts and analytical circles, but it hasn't come out officially yet. Facts. In 5 months, he managed to condemn Maduro's capture, condemn the strikes on Iran, block American bases, and close the airspace to the official media space. Sánchez in 5 months managed to condemn Maduro's capture, condemn the strikes on Iran, block American bases, close the airspace in relation to Washington boiling point. The U.S. has built a long list of grievances and documentary evidence of financing the left, with much testimony, even against fellow party members. Is it a coincidence that the facts in the ruling party's headquarters are exactly like in Venezuela, when the U.S. has the maximum leverage for years? Testimony under oath in the American system? That is, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It can simply be logic. When you have information and political will, you use it. It's cinema, theater, and circus all at once. Stop for a second. Take a step back and look at today's scene in light of the facts. In the first act, the Prime Minister and his party have been trying for years to neutralize the anti-corruption police. Lira dies, a member of the ruling party, a member of the Central Committee of the ruling party, in recorded conversations persuades someone to commit perjury and tries to discredit a specific officer of the anti-corruption unit of the Civil Guard. That's what they call it, the Civil Guard, not the European left. There is active testimony and a pile of evidence. Who is investigating these facts? It looks very similar to what Zelensky was trying to do in Ukraine. By the way, Putin has never done this and never will. Why? The reason is very simple. He financed all of them, the Europeans, with sworn testimonies in the baths, and now no one at all in the American court anymore. They have plenty of opportunities to rob the people, but criticizing the authorities has been forbidden. By the way, this used to be a favorite pastime for the guys in the 90s, to catch an investigator who was poking his nose, as Vladimir Vladimirovich used to say, where it didn't belong. Beat him up, then throw him into the sauna, lock the door, barricade it, and set the sauna on fire. Facts. In St. Petersburg, quite a lot of people were killed like that. Well, I don't know about Moscow. So, I won't call myself a doctor, but if we're talking about European years, testimonies under oath in St. Petersburg in an American court, a bunch, facts. She entertained people in St. Petersburg, so I suspect that in Moscow they heard about it and also started having fun. Just don't think that all of this was done by bandits without uniforms. In Moscow, when they heard about it, they also started having fun. Just don't think that all of this was done by bandits without uniforms. I mean, of course they were bandits, but they all had ranks and would salute every time someone asked them to. If someone asked, then Venezuela would finance her without any problems. And with the left in Spain, look how interesting this turned out. In Russia, everyone was killed. They tried to do the same in Ukraine, but the Americans didn't allow it. And in Spain, those same Americans, it seems, handed so much interesting material to the Spanish guards that they dared to enter the headquarters of the ruling party, with weapons in their hands. And they took out a bunch of documents. This is a plot device that in Hollywood is called poetic justice. When the blow comes back the same way it came, there's a lot of evidence. The antagonist attacks the hero, and 2 hours of screen time later, the hero is standing at the antagonist's door with a warrant, or with a gun or something like that. Facts. In real life, it takes a little longer and happens a little less often, but as we can see, it still happens. There's one more detail that a screenwriter would definitely include, because without it, the symmetry wouldn't be complete. From the moment a real rift began between Trump and Sánchez, that was in October 2025 when Spain was the only NATO country that hadn't increased its defense spending, and then through the blocking of American bases, the leftist ambassador, Israel's testimony, the oath about operations against NATO not increasing spending on equipment, then through the blocking of America, in court, lots of evidence, facts.
Операции против Maduro.
In the Spanish-Venezuelan court, which oversees government officials, new materials suddenly appeared in all cases at once, including the Coldo and Cama cases. The Abalos case, expansion of charges, a bunch of people received status for the first time, received materials for the first time in order to make him a suspect. Larry Diaz had widened to include 10 people, and today there was a search in the party headquarters itself. They were hiding everything there because they knew no one would go in. Well, of course, without Trump, no one would have gone in there. It's not like the work of Spanish investigators suddenly became more effective. This is a flow of information that either didn't exist before or existed but never reached the courts, which were financed by Europeans and had leftist jurisdiction all the way to the top for years. He shared his testimony under oath into the archives. Someone explained to the judges of the Supreme Court of Spain, the time has come. As of today, each new folder in Spain's national court makes the theory that the timing is a coincidence a little less plausible, and the version of the operation is much more specific. Well, now it financed the European left. Testimonies under oath are now in the news feeds at 10 a.m. Madrid time. The climax. An elite central operational unit of the Civil Guard enters the headquarters of the ruling party. Well, just like the facts. Into the Democratic National Committee, they search documents for evidence of illegal funding and signs of a conspiracy to discredit judges and investigators involved in the case. It's not just a European attempt to destroy those who investigate corruption. Testimony in court. But again, it strongly resembles Ukraine and Russia and a bunch of other evidence. The former organization secretary of the PSOE, that's the ruling party, right? Former minister, businessman, lawyer, list of charges, organizing a criminal organization, bribery, disclosure of state secrets, coercion to give false testimony, influencing institutions. You couldn't make it up any better. It's straight out of a book. They just took everything from the law that financed the European left for years. Testimonies, faces. Sánchez says, "We're cooperating. I swear, we're cooperating." And at the same time, an oath in court and a bunch of evidence. But you can't say we have proof at the same time. And at the same time say this is a witch hunt, right? The opposition is demanding a resignation. Well, what good is the opposition? Yes, I think the opposition was told a little bit about what was going to happen, and somewhere in new facts. In a federal prison, there's a man sitting who might already know everything, and who might already be singing, as we say in our prison slang. For 20 years, European special socialists thought that the money of the European left smelled, that testimony under oath about financing dictators in an American court could be called a bunch of facts. Well, let them go spill blood. That you can block allies, cover up trading with Venezuela, finance absolutely European leftists because after all, that's what everyone does. Well, everyone does it for years. They didn't learn one thing. Information accumulates. And when it ends up in the hands of those in an American court, those who have the will and the tools, then the bill is presented. Gentlemen, we are the facts. In a rare moment, a remarkable, amazing, fantastic, very rare moment, when justice, slow, imperfect, but real, catches up with those who thought they were untouchable. This is not the end of the story, it's the middle. This is a continuation. The European part is cooler, the testimonies are more interesting, just not under oath for a second. If the American one was somehow useful to you, Venezuela financed the European left. The testimonies were under oath. In the American one, there were a lot.